Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here and joining us. Great to see such a big turnout on such a beautiful day. My name is Diana Martin. I'm the Executive Director here at Hourglass, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to today's First Friday Forum with City of Lancaster Mayor Danene Sorace. Woo! Mayor Sorace started her first term in 2018. Under her leadership, the City of Lancaster is focused on 4 strategic priorities: strong neighborhoods, safe places, sustainable economy, and sound government. The city has undertaken quite a few initiatives over the last few years. The city adopted its comprehensive plan this past fall, the first one in about 30 years. The city is pursuing a home rule charter. We heard a little bit about that at our last First Friday Forum. And the city has invested in efforts ranging from lead safety and street safety to affordable housing and improved broadband. Mayor Sorace is going to touch on a number of those subjects today, as well as some other city issues and priorities. And there'll be plenty of time for questions from all of you. So gear up and let us know what's on your mind. So before we get started, I just want to thank our First Friday Forum sponsors, Rogers & Associates for making these forums possible, the Ware Center for hosting us, and also Shoemaker, who does our live streaming services. We have a whole nother group who is watching today online, so we'll give them a quick wave and glad that they're joining us as well. So with that, let me hand it over to our speaker today, and thanks for being here.
Well, good day. It's a delight to be back again to present at Hourglass, and thank you all for carving out a little bit of time on this beautiful Friday. We have really been, I like it when it's warm. I know we're going into a little bit more seasonally cold weather this weekend. My husband reminded me that 50 really isn't cold, but I think it is. So today I'm going to attempt to bring you into, let's see, the fray of work that's happening right now and the priorities that are taking center stage. So very likely you've heard about some of these topics, or maybe all of them if you have been following along. But I'm going to try to give you something a little bit different today, and think about this talk as, what am I talking about, thinking about, and doing these days? Like what's on my mind on a regular in the month of May. So I'm planning to leave plenty of time for questions, and we're going to jump right into it. So I'm going to talk about these 5 things. When we get down to comprehensive plan implementation, there's a little bit more, but home rule, water affordability, police hiring, homelessness, and that comp plan, which is a major focus of mine these days. So last month, members of the Home Rule Study Commission were in this room talking about their work, which provided a perfect background for what I'm going to share with you today. So just a quick recap in case you missed the headline this morning. The commission did meet last night, and they discussed the elected positions of treasurer and controller, and began to talk about the office of mayor. So anything that they have decided thus far is subject to change and can be revisited. It seems like we will retain the general structure of our local government with what is referred to as a strong mayor form of government, which is a mayor that operates as a chief executive, and a legislative body made up of 7 members. They also are going to be taking up the issue of taxation and our financial sustainability in the coming weeks. And that brings me to this slide. And so, as you know, the most important thing about the home rule process is how we maintain our services without over-relying, or the continued over-reliance on property taxes alone. So I just wanted to give you this slide to show you where does the money come from and how is it spent. A few things to note. Property taxes, which is that red bar across the top, is our largest source of revenue, and it does not cover the entirety of the next 2 lines on the second bar, which is the Police and Fire Bureau. It is the only tax that can be raised by City Council, and they can raise it up to 30 mills right now with no home rule change. We are currently at about 12.68 or 86 mils. On the second bar, you can see the police bureau in red, the fire bureau in black, and then a gray section, which is called Administrative Services General. And I'm just gonna tell you what this is in case you might be wondering. This is our operating debt, our pension obligations, and our health benefits. And the debt includes borrowing for infrastructure improvements that we've been making across the city. And then I also just want to call your attention back to the top bar, that yellow part of the bar that says ARPA. That's the part that is going away, and that currently comprises 8.2% of our total revenues, or $6 million. Okay, so here you can see our revenues and expenses over time, highlighting the use of our general reserve funds. So that green part is general reserve funds. And historically, the city has used general reserve funds to balance its budget year over year. And every year we try to make that up so that we don't actually spend those general reserve funds. But it's a constant catch-up game. So right now, we also have ARPA. And you may recall that we were awarded $39.5 million of American Rescue Plan Act funds. That's what ARPA stands for. Back in March of 2021. The majority of these funds have actually been used for revenue replacement. We've been using these to maintain our operations, while we've also been making historical investments in our community facilities and affordable housing. And we are incredibly grateful for this direct infusion of revenue coming out of a very uncertain time in which we had furloughed 70 staff in the middle of COVID, and we're not sure how we were all going to bounce back. So there was a pretty big jump in expenses, as you can see, in 2023 of about $2 million. And that's because all of the savings that we realized by refinancing some bond debt went away. And so we're back to the beginning. Okay, so this is how I've been trying to think about how do we talk about the 2025 budget, which is, I know it seems so far away to talk about 2025, but we are starting right now. We have 6 cards on the table. The first one is to increase revenue, and the second one, of course, is to reduce expenses. This is what we do in our households all the time. People pick up part-time jobs, they stop spending so much money on streaming services, they give up their coffee in the morning, all of those things. Well, we're doing the same thing. On the increased revenue side, we got one option: we can raise property taxes. There are some other ways that we have been successfully raising revenue, and that's mostly through our grant making, in which right now we have $89 million under management, and that was just a huge endeavor that, that the city has taken on. That's currently funding 20 positions, and that does not include ARPA. That $89 million does not include ARPA. The second option is, instead of taxes, is asking for a payment in lieu of taxes. And you guys have largely heard about pilot payments. Raise your hand if you've heard about pilot payments. Okay, great. Following along. Okay, so we generally raise about $2.2 million in pilot payments, payments made in lieu of taxes. And the largest contributor of our pilot payments is Penn Medicine Lancaster General Health. All right. Reducing expenses, we're on it. We are tackling this. But let me just explain one thing. Our budget increased last year by 2.2%, and our goal was to keep it flat. 2.2%, that's way less than inflation. And it's in large measure because we have debt obligations. We have medical insurance costs that continue to rise. Or if someone on our staff, as we're self-insured, gets really sick, and then we have to pay more. Or we have contract obligations with our 3 bargaining units, and they're getting about a 3% increase each year. So 2.2% doesn't sound like a lot, but when you think about 2.2% of a $70 million general fund budget, it's still $1.5 million we got to come up with somewhere. So every year, unless we are below 0%, we are having to make continual cuts to our budget. So there's going to be a lot more to talk about how we're reducing expenses as we go into 2025. We can also consider using the last little bit of ARPA, which might be about $1 to $2 million to close the budget. We can keep using our general reserve funds, but I'm like, no, we can't do this in 2025. And we've actually gotten outside kind of acknowledgement that that making this decision is the right one. We just had a review by of our bond rating by Moody's, and they have revised Lancaster's outlook from negative to stable with a continuation of our A3 rating, which is like better news than I was expecting. I was kind of expecting that we might get downgraded because they changed how they look at our entire revenues. And we have very low liquidity and very high debt, especially in our utilities, especially in our water fund. So, but what is changing is that incomes in Lancaster are continuing to go up, and they have identified that the city is willing to take on those hard topics and raise taxes, which city council has done. So I'll take stable over negative. And then there's the wild card. Who the heck knows what's going to happen? We have some pretty large properties that are for sale. If they actually sold this fiscal year or even next fiscal year, we'll get a real estate transfer tax. That could be like, ooh, it's a surprise. Do you all know Monopoly and community chess? I feel like the yellow card, the wild card, is like community chess. You don't know what you're going to get. It could be good news, it could be bad news, but that's what this is. And then last but not least is home rule. So there is this possibility that could bring changes. You are all have been following, I'm sure, about home rule, but here's the quick recap. Literally, it means make the rules at home. I just love that expression. It kind of brings it all back. It allows for some flexibility in defining structure, powers, taxation. If you want to know more and take a much deeper dive, please visit the City of Lancaster website and you can go full into it. I'm talking about this because we're talking about our financial sustainability. Just want to point out that real estate tax is the only one that can be changed right now. If home rule were to pass, all of these would be able to change. And if I sound like a broken record about this, I am a broken record about this. A sound government, one that operates effectively, efficiently, transparently, is fundamental to our ongoing success as a community. I mean, just like look around Pennsylvania. Public safety is foundational to our economic development and vitality. Ongoing infrastructure investments in our parks, street lights literally are paid for by your tax dollars. Street paving, garbage collection, it all has to work for everything else to succeed. It is foundational to the success of any community. And through home rule, we might be able to raise some additional revenues in a different way that shifts some of the burden. But like I've said from the very beginning, this is the best of a bad set of options. This is not the panacea of like, all of a sudden, all of our problems are going to be solved because we have home rule. It is not true. But it is the one thing that is left on the table after everything else has been exhausted. And literally, we have tried every little thing, going all the way back to Prosper Parish, which was a partnership between the Chamber and then Mayor Rick Gray to focus on the expense side, trying to get reforms to pension, Act 111. What else was in there, Tom? Those were the two big things. And so that failed. That didn't go anywhere. So then, okay, fast forward, I become mayor. We start looking at revenues and just the burden of property taxes on Pennsylvanians. I mean, Pennsylvania properties are paying for our public education as well as our municipal operations. And goodness knows they've been talking about changing this for as long as I've been alive. Every year I get older, and every year that becomes more of a dream, like a fantasy, that we're ever going to get property tax reform. Okay. Property taxes are based on assessed value of real estate. I'm going to flip through these pretty quickly. You've likely all seen these. You may also be wondering, why is our assessed value so low when we keep having new construction projects? And I'll just say the fact that we are able to like keep level on our assessed property taxes is a dream state for many communities who see their assessed values going down. Also just want to point out that not all properties pay taxes, and roughly 30% are tax exempt. That's shown here in the red. You want to look at that again? Whoops, I'm going ahead. Wait. Sorry. All the way back. That one. Yeah, it's a lot of red, right? All right, and then earned income taxes. Here we go. So these have naturally increased over time. As incomes have increased over time, we have seen our earned income revenue increase over time. And this is at 0.6%, which is a percentage that has not changed. It started out at 0.5 in like 1965, and then it increased by 0.1% somewhere in the 80s or early 90s. I can't remember. I just want to say again that property ownership is not always correlated to income. Just because you own your home does not mean that you can absorb continually paying higher and higher property taxes. And you can ask anybody that's living on a fixed income what that means when their tax bill continues to go up. Property taxes are also fixed. They stay the same. They never go down, y'all. It's kind of ironic. And they're going to continue to increase because we know the school district is planning this final phase of construction. They're talking about a 2% increase per year. Doesn't sound like a lot, but over the next 5 years, that's a 10% increase in a school district taxes. And the same is pretty much true with the city of Lancaster. Even though we have not been increasing our taxes every year, it comes every other year, every 3 years, but it's gonna keep coming. And because these taxes, the property taxes, are fixed costs, they are associated with housing costs. And what do we know about housing costs? They've increased dramatically across the nation. And so when we can calibrate that a little bit, we're doing a little bit to help ease the burden of the cost of housing in our community. Whereas earned income tax, you make more, you pay more. If the next year you make less, you pay less. They're flexible, they're not fixed. And if you're a retired person in Pennsylvania, you don't pay them. You all know that, right? Okay. All right. So, just to give you a comparison between property taxes and earned income taxes, what they generate, what their costs are for residents, and what their implications are for a budget, you can see here that a 1 mil increase, about a 10% increase in taxes, generates about $2.5 million of income to the city. And an earned income tax right now generates, well, you saw the slide, we're in the $8 million. If we did a 12% increase in property taxes, that would generate $4.5 million, and that would be $185 to the average property owner in the city of Lancaster. If we increase from 0.6 to 0.9, a 50 basis point increase, we would generate $4.5 million, and you'd pay a little bit less. Following? Heads nodding helps. Yeah? Okay. All right. So for 2025, we have to develop 2 budgets. We can do the only property tax increase budget, which is like what we have now, or a home rule budget. And so we're actually doing 2 budgets right now. And God bless Tina Campbell, who's just joined our team as the new Director of Administrative Services, who has now taken on the task of not doing just 1 budget, but 2. So what if? So I just want to say there are 3 really big ifs here. If the outcome of the Home Rule Commission addresses the long-term sustainability of local government, they may not. The second, if the Home Rule Charter is on the ballot in November, it could be pushed back until the May primary. If the measure even passes, right? Voters in Lancaster actually have to decide on this. Then there may be some opportunities to do something differently. But again, this is the best of a bad set of options. So we have to close a $6 million budget deficit. So that's what only property tax increases are. And then on the expense side, if we have to close that $6 million deficit, we're talking about a 15% reduction in our staffing, which is about 380 people, 410 if you count the grant-funded positions. So we would eliminate 63 positions. Neither of these are realistic, right? We can't eliminate 63 positions, or like basically our entire fire bureau would go, which currently has 78 positions. That's not realistic, nor is it realistic to think that we can just plop down a 25% tax increase. So we're gonna have to do both things moving into 2025 if it's just the regular status quo, we do things the way we always do them, okay? So it just gives you a sense of the magnitude of what we're looking at. Okay, so just to close out this conversation, broken record is going to get shut off. It still means that we are going to need to have a tax increase next year. It also still means that we are going to have to come up with ways to reduce expenditures and continue to meet the demands of the city. And there's just no way around that. It's what every household budget has to do. And so we're going to do that. And we're going to be prepared for that if home rule doesn't advance or doesn't include these other tools. If it does include some of these other tools, we're still going to have to reduce expenses and we're still going to have to raise taxes, but they're going to be different. So I hate to cut to the punchline, but next year's budget is going to be hard. And there's going to need to be a lot more community conversation about it, which is why we're going to be introducing it in October, a full month earlier than typical, because we started working on it 3 or 4 months earlier than we typically have. So stay tuned for more on that. All right, let's switch gears and talk about water. Okay, so I'm spending a lot of time. I was recently appointed to the Environmental Protection's Local Government Advisory Council, which is this national group of mayors and other elected officials, to spend time talking about EPA regulations. And so I'm spending a lot of time advocating on behalf of our water customers, which probably most of you are, even if you don't live in the city. There are 2 new, very expensive water regulations that are coming from the EPA related to the lead and copper rule and PFOA and PFAS, what are sometimes referred to as forever chemicals. These are largely unfunded mandates, and although the Biden administration has included a lot of money to help communities resolve these problems, I and many other mayors across the country will tell you it's not enough. It's not enough to meet the need that exists because we have done such a poor job of consistently investing in infrastructure in America. And that's been on display repeatedly and very recently. But both of these things are changing in some really uncertain ways and have a lot of potential to impact our low and moderate income households in very negative ways. So this is all just to say I'm spending a lot of time looking at utility costs and affordability and what some of these things are going to cost over the next 10, 25 years and how that will impact different income levels. And stay tuned for more on that. I'm going to be going back to Washington later this month talking about this again. I've literally talked to people at the White House, at EPA, at DEP. I've talked to our elected officials. We've had letters sent from various members of our elected official delegation to be able to elevate these issues. But this is a crisis that, in terms of water affordability, that is going to hit Lancaster particularly hard. And we've got 120,000 customers, and if you caught the LNP article, there's many other smaller water systems in Lancaster County that are going to be impacted. And so this really is a county-wide conversation that we have to make about our water quality. Okay, next. A big bright spot, and I am perma-grinning about this. We had 455 applications to become a Lancaster City police officer in our last round. Woo! And a huge shout out to our engagement team at the Police Bureau and our communications team who went above and beyond in terms of doing outreach, calling candidates who had applied. Hey, we got your application, just want to follow up, see if you have any questions, like literally walking people through this process in a way that we have never done before. And so 133 of the 455 passed the physical agility test and the written test. So you see how big the funnel has to be at the top to be able to get quality candidates, right? So we are now conducting backgrounds for the first 30 on that list of 133, and we are so hopeful that we are going to be able to hire 10 to 15 new officers this year, okay? So while I'm also talking about our budget and how difficult it is, we need to have police officers. There's just that's the number one thing that local government does is provide for public safety. And we have 20 more police officers right now that could walk out the door and retire. So we are just churning right now in terms of the silver tsunami, if you will. And our team is just kicking butt. And so I'm really pleased with the way that this cycle of recruitment has gone. And also, we're getting calls from around the state and the country. They want to know what we're doing because they found out we got 455 applicants. We're like, we're the best. So, all right. All right, switching gears entirely again. Sorry if this feels like whiplash, but literally, you're walking through day to day, hour to hour, what the meetings I'm having. Homelessness, you've all noticed, right? Homelessness is increasing in the city of Lancaster and the county and the state and the country. This year's point-in-time count, which was conducted in January, saw a 13.5% increase in homelessness across the county, and that is on top of an 11% increase the year before. That count was done in January. In the city of Lancaster, in January, we had 80 shelter beds available, and they still counted 69 individuals on the street. That gives you some sense of scope. Now, some of those folks could have been out of shelter, but I was talking to my friend Paige McFarland, who's listening from the Food Hub, and she said that they had over 260 people moving through the shelter. 88% of them were from Lancaster County. 88% of the individuals seeking shelter in the city were from Lancaster County. And I just want to say that because there's a lot of stereotyping and lack of understanding about the people that are on our streets and why. So, fast forward to today. It is May the 4th, 3rd. In about 27 days, the shelter that still has 40 beds is going to close, and there will be no low barrier shelter in Lancaster County until December. So we have a 6-month gap that we are feverishly trying to figure out what to do. Based on recommendations from the Lancaster County Homeless Coalition, their recommendation was to expand outreach on our city streets. And so I picked up that, called Sam Bressi and said, Sam, we got to figure out what to do because we can't have all of these people on the street. It's not going to work. And I'm really pleased to say that collectively, we raised $200,000 to put 2 more full-time outreach folks on the street and replenish a fund that the Lancaster County Homeless Coalition had expended that will pay for first month's rent and a security deposit to get people going into an apartment because they have gotten a job, but they can't keep a job because they don't know where they're sleeping at night, or they can't get their personal grooming or their laundry or be able to figure out their meal situation. So I want to just give a shout out to the Lancaster City Alliance. I want to shout out the High Foundation, the Lancaster County Community Foundation, and many others who came together to come up with $200,000 to fill a really critical need right now. So But clearly we are not done because this is a stopgap measure. So I want to talk about two very bright spots, and I want to give a lot of kudos to the Lancaster County Homeless Coalition for finally figuring out where we can have permanent shelter space, and to acknowledge the Otterbein Methodist Church and its leadership for stepping in to this in a really big way. So on the right is Otterbein. It is going to be renovated. There's some fundraising that needs to happen to bring this to fruition, but it is on track, and it can be done by the end of this year. And then on the left is the South Prince Street Hub. Both of these projects are being supported by the City of Lancaster and the American Rescue Plan Act funds, as well as some money from the County American Rescue Plan Act funds. These are capital projects, but it does not mean that we are off the hook in terms of the operating costs to be able to maintain and run these facilities. So, if you want to do something, support the County Homelessness Coalition, Food Hub, Tenfold. I have partners here from Tenfold, Anchor Lancaster, Water Street Rescue Mission, the Moravian Center, LGH's Street Medicine Team, the LEMSA Refresh Lancaster, and Blueprints, to just name a few of the organizations that are leaning into this really hard with very limited resources to tackle the hardest and saddest situations where people are dealing with mental health issues. They are ostracized in some cases from their family. They don't have family. I mean, it's tough. Plus, they're living on a street. If you want to help more upstream with more direct support for housing, I'm going to point you to Habitat for Humanity, HDC Mid-Atlantic, Partners with Purpose, Chestnut Street Housing, Saka Development, and Tenfold again. These are just a few of the organizations that are actually also helping people move through the continuum from the streets into housing and supporting them long term. And as you all know, we just installed the most expensive bathroom in Lancaster City history on Prince Street. And I will tell you that, there are a lot of comments about that, but you won't be able to burn it down. And the last time we had a porta potty next to the Welcome Center, it got lit on fire and caused a lot of damage. So that thing is built to last, and that is the point. And yes, I do spend a lot of time in my day talking about bathrooms. Right, Marshall? All right, switching gears again. The comp plan, future forward. So excited to have this. Our future Lancaster is in the beginning of implementation. The plan centers on these 5 core planning systems, which you can see here. You can dive into the full plan at the cityoflancasterpa.gov. And one core component, which you've seen this map before, but I want to give you a little bit of an update, is reimagining the Conestoga River. And I am really excited about the 70 acres that is to the north that is being reimagined by the Partners for Environmental Stewardship, which is leading this amazing coalition of nonprofits, the High Foundation, the Alliance for the Chesapeake Bay Foundation, the Lancaster Conservancy, Stroud Water Research Center, the Water Science Institute, and Lancaster Clean Water Partners. And we've just gone through, although I'm kind of disappointed, but I understand it wasn't at all of the meetings, but there is just a lot of energy and excitement about this. And I know there are folks here, Robin and Tom and others, that are working on how do we imagine what this space can be, and how can this be realized as part of a master planning process as well as an environmental center, and how do we elevate the work that we're doing around water quality right here. And you all just heard how much we need to focus on this. So the strategic alignment just could not be more advantageous. And we're actually doing something with this land that has been the source of much back and forth for over 100 years. And so we're very excited about this. We're also very much looking forward to setting to work to create a new small area plan for the prison and what's around the prison. And so that process is getting started. The RFP's on the street, and we are actively raising money for that. We are also working right now on a bit of a land swap between Price Elementary and the Lancaster Rec Commission, in which we're literally going to swap parcels The Lancaster Rec Commission is going to move into Price Elementary, and they are going to be able to radically expand their work as it relates, specifically as it relates to childcare. And the Lancaster School District is going to have a different space, a different footprint in order to build a new Price Elementary School that will meet the needs of today. I don't know if you've ever been in Price Elementary School, but back in, I don't know, 1975, 76, there was this movement to have elementary schools that were all open with no walls. I actually went to one when I was in kindergarten. And Price is still like that. And it doesn't really work very well. So they're going to be rebuilding a new school. All right, very quickly, I'm going to run through other special projects that are consuming right now. Healthy Lives, Healthy Lancaster, the first ever time that we are collecting data specific to the health needs of Lancaster city residents. We're also, remember that lead and copper rule I was talking about that was going to cost us a lot of money? Well, the way that we're trying to avoid spending a lot of money is to get our residents to tell us what kind of pipe comes into their house that brings their water into their house. Never before have we been responsible for anything from the curb into the house. We've only ever been responsible from the water line to the curb. Okay, so this is like a new mandate that we have to find out, what is that material? What is it made of? And I'm so pleased to tell you that over 10,000 people have gone down to their basement and taken a picture and submitted it on our app. So we only have 40,000 more to go. We have a new Parks, Recreation, and Open Space plan that's underway, and we're very excited about this. You're seeing Milburn Playground here. It's going to have some more improvements, but we recently just did, with a lot of help from a lot of partners, a new play space. And we're currently working on our city's first ever tourism master plan. You're hearing a lot of first evers. All of these are supported by grant funds. That $89 million I mentioned, this is what it's doing to help move our city forward. You've also probably noticed some of the changes to our streets as part of our Vision Zero initiative to eliminate serious fatalities and injuries by 2030. That effort was supercharged again with a $12.7 million grant. And you know, there's just a lot more, but I'm gonna stop here. I am really proud to be able to serve as mayor. We have accomplished so much just here in 2024. And I know that all of the employees, so there's 600 of us all together when you add in the utilities, water, sewer, stormwater, and I know that they feel the same because we're all working really hard to deliver and to continue to be part of Lancaster's success and future. And so now I'm happy to take some questions. I'm going to come around with some microphones so everyone can hear you. And one of my board members, Mike Rowan's going to help me out too. Thanks. Do you want to bring that one, Liz?
Thank you so much. Great presentation, exciting things. Appreciate all you do, obviously.
Thanks, Liz.
So actually, just two quick questions, actually. On the pilot properties, if home rule goes through, for example, would it be reasonable that you could ask them to pay maybe 50%? And if they don't want to do that or not able to do that, that they would at least pay a portion of police and fire, because obviously they use those services. Mm-hmm. And if they don't want to pay a percentage of that, then they pay for the services when they occur. So if police come out or fire comes out, they would have to pay a hefty fee at that point. So those are all different options I just was thinking about that might be a way to help with the pilot properties. And then the second one is regarding the prison. It's my understanding that the county actually owns that prison property, correct? So can you just explain a little bit why the city's doing an RFP on what the use of that would be if you don't currently own that property?
Yeah, so to your first question, we legally cannot require anybody to pay in lieu of taxes. We can't charge people for when the police and fire come. We can only just continue to ask. And there's some folks who contribute pilot that pay the full amount of if their property was fully taxable, and others that pay some percentage. So that's that. And then the county does own the prison, and I've made clear that we don't have any interest in owning the prison. We don't have the financial wherewithal to carry the costs of that property or whatever. But our residents have a lot to say about what the future is for that site. And that's our job, is to collect the feedback and integrate it into our comprehensive plan, and then be able to work in partnership with the county for what the future is for that site. And so it is a partnership with the county, recognizing that they are going to eventually dispose of that property, sell it, do whatever, but it's going to have to meet some of the stipulations from the planning process. Yeah.
Raise your hand, question for the mayor. So you can go over there. See, this is why I recruited Mike. He gets to run around.
Which hand was it? So, thank you. Okay.
An observation, and it's harsh, but when you go to the 100 block of North Queen Street, Binns Park now, unfortunately, and Binns Park and now the new park, unfortunately, I said that wrong. When you have all those homeless people, and we have this wonderful convention center, and we have the 300 block of North Queen, but people walking from one to the other get unnerved and get scared. I can see it when I go to the county services building, and in 3 visits there, 2 of them were emergency units dealing with the drug overdose when I came out the door, in just 3 visits, 2. There's no answer, and it's certainly a harsh observation, but as long as we have those huge encampments, we need money brought in. You were talking about getting revenue in. The people who come to the convention center have money to spend, but if we make it very unattractive for them to spend it, we're losing a source of revenue which we could use to help people. It's like a downward spiral. We have less funds to help those that need help because we're not being able to pull it in because we're discouraging people from leaving the very core of downtown.
You're not wrong. And this is why we are working from a law enforcement perspective, a social service perspective, why our officers continue to partner with Blueprints several times a week to go out and try to get folks into rehab. It is a crisis, and I would enjoin you to help me continue to elevate this. And I do appreciate that the Lancaster County continues to fund the Homelessness Coalition, and I would also submit that the funding that is currently available does not begin to meet the need that we are seeing on our streets right now. And we have to do more, and that means that it's going to be more of a public-private partnership to respond. Lancaster County is completely unprepared for maintaining homelessness services across the county. And I talked to mayors in Columbia, Ephrata, Quarryville, Denver Borough. Homelessness is everywhere. And we need at least to do what we're doing now, and then we need a much more comprehensive countywide plan.
Mayor, thank you for the presentation. It was very, very good. I'm curious, I didn't hear you mention anything about the combined water systems, sewer and water, stormwater.
Yeah, so we are, let's see, good one, Josh. We are, let's see, I came into office in 2018. We are in year 7 of negotiating our long-term consent decree, and it is just slow going. And I don't know, you obviously know that we're now involved in litigation with Manheim Township. That's part of it because the consent decree requires us to work with Manheim Township to address the stormwater. So that's the latest move, but it's still hanging out there. It's still going to be another $25 to $50 million of expense, hopefully over 20 or 25 years. But that, in addition to just the ongoing maintenance that we need, the investment that we need that's in our capital plan now, plus 2 new unfunded mandates, that's the water affordability crisis I'm talking about.
Got a question here from Larry.
On the revenue side, I don't stay in hotels locally, obviously, so I'm just ignorant. But what is our city's hotel tax?
0.
Why?
Because that goes to the county. Who wants to answer this question better than me? Yeah, Joel, thank you. Joel Cliff from Discover Lancaster. Welcome.
So the state mandated, other than Pittsburgh and Philly, there's not municipal level lodging taxes. So it's only at the county level, and a portion of it goes towards the convention center bond payoff. The rest of it goes to us for promoting the city and the county for driving heads and beds and hopefully further taxation that helps drive the economy here. So over 27,000 jobs related to tourism in the county, and it's in the top 10 of employers, and a lot of tax revenue comes from it, so we try and help the economy that way, but no, that's a state level decision.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi, Jess.
I just first comment is that I had the privilege of working beside her for 4 and some years, and she is like this all the time, energetic, tirelessly dedicated to the common good, and Lancaster is incredibly lucky to have her.
Oh, thanks, Jess. Thank you.
It's very true. You've mentioned a couple of the things about county, about Manheim Township. If you had the power to wave a magic wand, we're all constituents of Lancaster County, the state of Pennsylvania, the federal government. What would you wave in terms of support you could get from one or more of those entities?
Well, if I had a magic wand, we wouldn't have 60 municipalities and however many school districts. That would be the first thing to go. We would have a much more, just look at our fire service for a minute and how many ways we slice and dice the fire service and response. Ambulance is another thing. We're all paying for this, but it's somewhat hidden from taxpayer view. And we would just provide public safety emergency response services in a different way countywide, as well as education. I'm not sure about that entirely, city-county consolidation, but something different than what we have now. I think that would be my first thing. I just see a lot of inefficiencies and a lot of ways that we can do things better. And I am, I'm encouraged by the things that are happening around the county. I don't know if any of you went to the state of the county. I was telling some folks about this yesterday. It was so exciting to hear what's happening in terms of Denver and Corryville and some of the planning efforts that are happening around the county. And we are approaching this really difficult point in time where there's a lot more people that want to move here than there's housing that's available, our local zoning issues, and then you just divide that 60 ways, and no wonder a developer's like, I'm out. Like, I don't want to spend my time and energy doing this. I don't want to be sued. You saw we were sued for doing affordable housing in the city of Lancaster in the Northwest. So it's just, there's not a business, it's really hard to do that, and that would be my magic wand.
Hey, Mayor, good to see you again. So under home rule, to go back to the lodging, would you be able to institute under home rule a lodging fee tax or a drink or well tax? I mean, because it's not like they could pick the convention center up and move it. I mean, you got them.
Yeah. So
I'm just,
So here's the thing, like to underscore, that's in bright red letters at the end of every slide. I should put this on, and I don't, but I think I will now. No new taxes. There are no new taxes, and that's a tax. The state would view that as a tax, not a fee. Yeah, none. We have the 4, that's it. We don't get any new ones. I would love to have a drink tax. Please bring it. That would solve so many problems. I mean, it would create some other problems, but we're already dealing with those problems at 1 a.m. when the bars all close. So. Amos.
Thank you, Mayor. Great presentation. Regarding police recruitment, I've heard that we're understaffed by like 30 officers. The number changes, but And yet we've seen crime continue to decrease in the city of Lancaster. So I'm curious how you think about like how many officers we should have.
I'm so glad you asked me this, Amos, because I meant to say this. We're in the midst of actually doing a staffing study. For years, we had just had 145 officers in our budget, like just year after year after year. And I think I asked Patrick, I'm like, where's that number come from? He's like, I don't remember. And so we are in the midst of doing a staffing study that's taking into account the fact that we are seeing fewer calls for service and reductions in crime in the city of Lancaster to really understand what our number should be. But I still feel good about hiring 10 or 15 this year, knowing that we are like right around 100. Let me also be clear, we have not ever really had 145 officers. We've more been in like the 135-ish range. And so now we are down 30 officers, and with another 20 that can retire, I feel really good, like we need to do this now, and then we also need to know like what is that number? What is the appropriate staffing level for a city our size, with our crime, with the expectations that the public has. You know, in some communities, they don't respond to low-level property crime. Here in the city of Lancaster, if your bike is stolen, our police are gonna investigate it. That doesn't happen in every community. So it's understanding kind of what the expectations are as well.
Hi, thanks for the wonderful presentation. On the topic of police, I think there's Lancaster 411 for like non-emergency, or for not non-emergency, but for care not cops, as the hashtag goes. I had a neighbor once who just like needed to dry up for the night, but was not a threat to anyone, and I didn't know about Lancaster 411. I know funding something that's sort of like an alternative to the police for when you don't need people with guns is like another thing to fund. But what is the current state of that in Lancaster, and what could we do? Not to like shrink the police budget right away, but to almost provide like a new service like some cities around the country have been piloting for like get prompt response for people who can show up and help our neighbors who aren't a physical threat.
Yes, so we, and during my time as mayor, we actually have the first police social workers that have ever been in the city of Lancaster, and we now have 2. And we also have a housing social worker, because we're just constantly up against all manner of issues related to housing. Those positions have been supported with additional grant dollars. We don't have a kind of crisis response team in the same way that other communities do, because we don't have the volume to merit the investment in the same way. But what we have done is trained all of our officers in trauma-informed approaches, de-escalation, as well as having those police social workers available at night and on the weekends, so that they can respond to calls after police have secured the situation and made sure that it's safe for our social workers to arrive on scene. So we're doing kind of a hybrid, is how I would describe it. Some more? 211, thank you, thank you.
His wife is the United Way.
Josh, do you want to say what 211 is?
Actor.
Yeah. Josh, do you want to say what 211 is?
Certainly not an expert, but it is a...
Oh, Tim Stuhldreher from the United Way can say. Yeah, there you go.
Tim Stuhldreher, editor of One United Lancaster, which is supported by United Way of Lancaster County. 211 is a 24/7 hotline for social services. You call, it's multilingual, you can do it in English and Spanish, and somebody will walk you through whatever your crisis is and then refer you to an appropriate resource. The other thing I was thinking about in reference to this question is 911 and emergency response is a county function. And in the county behavioral health, there's a newly much more robust crisis response than there used to be. The mayor referenced blueprints for addiction recovery. Those folks are embedded in the county government, and if someone's in a mental health crisis or an addiction crisis, they can send out those types of folks.
Thank you, Tim.
Tim's writing a story about the forum, so he's going to be in the story now. I was going to say, we might be running out of hands. There was one question I wanted to ask actually about the city has been investing in broadband. That was one of the initiatives. Wasn't touched on yet today. I'm just curious an update on that initiative.
Well, that was the other thing that on the first day in office, I was handed a lawsuit, and I was like, oh, goody. This is what I'm going to spend a lot of my time on. And I did for the first 3 months, was to try to understand what situation we were in. And so, as you know, that our relationship with the original provider unraveled because of legal challenges. We now have a new provider that we have entered into an agreement with. Their company name is Chantel, but they do business as Glow Fiber, and they have already started their engineering and build out strategy for the city of Lancaster. And so you'll see Glow Fiber. Some of you might have it if you don't live in the city now. I see us shaking a nod. And they will be providing, they will be fulfilling our vision of having high-speed broadband fiber in front of every address in the city. And that was really something that Mayor Gray launched during his time as mayor, and I feel glad that we are able to actually deliver on it. It means a lot. We all saw what it meant during COVID.
Final question. If not, we'll give the. Okay. We have a follow-up, and then we're gonna.
Just to follow up on that, how does the potential? There's been a lot of news nationally about the Affordable Connectivity Program and whether that will continue or not. How could that impact the build-out of Chantel?
Well, it won't impact the build out, but it will impact what people will be paying. We always had, we have an agreement with Chantel to have a low cost option for city residents. That would have been a zero cost option with the Affordable Connectivity Program because they could be reimbursed. I think it's $30 a month. And so that's how that will affect. And I think we are, there's a lot of advocacy that's happening related to the Affordable Connectivity Program. If you don't know what it was a federal initiative that came out of COVID that provided income qualified households with access to internet services for free. You had to apply, but thousands and thousands of households were taking advantage of this, and it was a way that kids were able to continue to maintain their education, family members could work, do all of the things. So that's the status, and unless and until Congress reinstates that, that's really what will happen. People will pay for it, but a lower price.
Well, we are right at the end of our hour here, so thank you so much, Mayor Sorace. Let's give her a round of applause. Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate all the information. As always, we do have a video recording of today's forum. That'll be on our website and YouTube next week, so feel free to share that with anyone else in the community. We will be back. Our next First Friday forum is Friday, June 7th. If you're interested in this topic of homelessness, we're going to do a deeper dive on that topic next month. We will actually have the Homelessness Coalition in here presenting more details about the $7 million plan, South Prince Street Homelessness Services Hub, and what some of that outreach is going to look like in this interim period when we don't have any shelter beds. So please join us again in June. Become an Hourglass member on our website at hourglasslancaster.org. Appreciate all of our members. Thanks so much. Bye.